everybody. This is Tanya Jackson, creator of Nonprofits Get Connected. And I've been gone a couple of weeks. I know I wasn't on for the last couple of weeks, but there's been a lot going on with the election, the pandemic, sick family members. My grandkids are here, so you may hear them a little bit in the background. So this week, I'm going to get caught up and I'm going to push. Today, I was supposed to do list segmentations. I'm going to push that back to next week. So I'm going to play my intro and I'll be right back. Okay, today we're going to be talking about the Zen of Acknowledgement, personalization, and we're going to be, let me mute my phone. That's my grandbaby calling me, and I'll get back to her. And we're going to be talking just a little bit about creating a donor pipeline, just giving you some basics on creating a donor pipeline and just some idea about how to go about that. So I'm going to share my screen so we can get started. Okay. All right. So the Zen of Acknowledgement, personalization, and creating a donor pipeline. So the first thing we're going to go over is the Zen of Acknowledgement letters, that woosah, that finishing touch, that thing that the donor would love, that's going to create, a connection between you and the donor. So the first thing is personalize and humanize your thank you. And so we talked about this some weeks back, but one of the things that really is a hit with donors is when you're sending out the acknowledgement letter or the thank you letter that you're sending out to them and you handwrite a little note on it. And that's a big hit with a lot of donors because even though the letter is typed, printed out, they know that a human person actually saw their letter and wrote a little note on it. And that's huge for them. To receive something where there's something their actual handwriting. Now, I did talk about this some weeks ago about who's signing your letters, and it does make a lot of difference in who's signing your letters. So it depends on if it's an event, that person that solicited them for the event, they may be able to sign it. You may have your board members sign it. You may have your CEO sign the letter. Sometimes after an event, what you could do is sort of have a little mailing party or whatever, and just split them up and basically say, well, I'm going to, you sign these and I'll sign this group. And, I know this person, so I'm going to sign that. You can do that. But in your regular acknowledgement letters, it's generally one or two people that may be signing that. And if you've got your CEO as a designated signer, you may not be able to catch that CEO to sit down and sign 50 letters at one time. So sometimes the personalization doesn't happen at that level, but I would say if you're doing an event, it would be good to do that. The next thing is send thanks in a timely and responsive manner. And we talked about that a little bit in last month in October. We talked about the timing of acknowledgement letters and thank you letters. And generally, it's about 48 to 72 hours. And that would be working hours. So that's not 48 to 72 straight hours around the clock. But it basically, you have to sit down and talk with your department, your organization, and determine how they want to do that. The next thing is show donors that they are making a difference. And how you do that in your acknowledgement letters is you're basically telling them, your donation could, send 25 kids to counseling, or your donation helped 5 families. If you don't want to be as specific to say it did. You want to use your wording should be it could help, because you don't want to be tied into them saying, oh, you told me that my donation went towards this, so can I see documentation? You don't want to get caught up in that. So you can just be very basic and say your donation could help kids go to counseling, or kids go on field trips or things like that. The next thing is avoid asking for more. Key, very key in a thank you letter. Some people will do a soft ask in a thank you letter, but there's a way that you can do a soft ask, and that's the next bullet, calls to action. In your thank you letter, you don't want to really just boldly say, thank you for your donation of $500 on such and such date, and would you be so generous to give another $5? You don't want to do that in your thank you letter, your acknowledgement letter, because that is their tax receipt for that particular donation. So you don't want to do an ask. Now, when I talk about soft ask, those are call to actions. You always want to give them ways that they can give. You don't want to ask them again, but you want to give them different ways. So like at the bottom of the letter, you can say, you can have a line there that says to donate, go to One Hope United, to the donate page. You can send them somewhere, or that's the call to action. So they may come back to that letter and say, oh, how did I donate this? Last time I sent in a check, let me check the letter. But you don't want to ask them for a certain amount, or, for another donation, because you're acknowledging the one that you've given them. And then where's the money going? That goes back to showing donors that they are making a difference. Those two are kind of linked together. And, in that letter, down at the bottom, like all the letters that I've done over the years, down at the bottom, there's I would put a place where it says purpose of donation, or something to that extent. And that purpose of donation would be where you would want to put something in the letter to let them know where that money is going, because a lot of donors do want to, like if they're living in a certain area, they do want to know that their donations are going to that area. And, I've had situations where one organization I worked with, we had to get a lockbox. And the reason we did that was because we had donors in probably 5 or 6 different states. What a donor gets kind of nervous about is, if I live in Florida and I've got to mail my check to Chicago, is my money going to Chicago? I want to help the kids in my area. So with a lockbox, they can mail the mailing address on the envelope would be a Florida address, but the lockbox, there's a lockbox number on there, which means that it's actually coming to Chicago. But when it gets to Chicago, it still will be filtered into a Florida donation. So they'll know that their money is still reaching the organization. It may not be processed in Florida, but it's still going to make it to their designation, and that those funds will still be used in their area. So you got to think about that kind of stuff. All right. So that was it for October. I just wanted to make sure I completed October when we were talking about donor acknowledgments. And that kind of completes the Zen part of acknowledgments. That's that nice and fluffy thank you part of acknowledgement letters. All right, so we're going to move on to creating a donor pipeline. And a donor pipeline, basically, that's your funnel of donors. That's how they're coming in and out of your organization, how they're entering, how they're flowing through, where they're going. You have the cultivation. First, you have the identification piece where you identify the donor. Then you have, once you get them in your database, you're cultivating them. Once you cultivate the donors, then you go in for an ask. You meet with them. You create an ask. And then once you create an ask, then you begin to send them different things. So there's a process, there's a funnel, there's a pipeline where these donors go through. So I'm going to go over 2 items of creating your donor pipeline. And one is your largest donors. So you want to, like your donors that give $1,000 and up are pretty much, a lot of organizations, that's where they start at. If you don't have donors that give to that level, then you start at a smaller level. You start, and especially if you're just beginning to come out, most times you're probably going to get $5 donors, $10 donors. You're going to get those, smaller amounts, but 1,000 is a good threshold to begin to look at donors, because as I move forward, we're going to be talking about the capacity to give and things like that. So let's, you say, you set your threshold, donors that gave $1,000. And then you want to look at those that are cumulative giving. And cumulative giving means over a period of time. So most times you want to do cumulative giving. You want to look at their cumulative giving, because let's say you have a donor that's given you, $10 a month. Well, that adds up to 12 months at $10. That's $120. So that donor could still fall within your threshold. If your threshold is set at 100 and up, that donor will fall into your threshold. And then your cumulative giving, you want to look at over a 12-month period. So you don't need to look at 2 years. You can just look at over a year's period. How much have they given? You can do an average gift. You can figure out the average that they've given. Then what they've given to. If it was an event, if it was a general donation. So you're gathering all the donations they've given in the year, and you're adding them up. You're totaling them up, and that's the cumulative giving. And then you want to look at the capacity, their capacity to give. The capacity to give is based on, so in some softwares, you can do sort of like an analytics, target analytics type thing on your donors, where it does like a basic search of your donors, and it takes the donations that they've given, it kind of averages it out, and it determines, well, this person's capacity to give is between 0 and 250, or you go from 500 to 1,000. So that's the capacity to give. The next section is your most loyal donors. And these are key donors. So because these are the donors that keep on giving, that give and give and give. So you want to look at your donor has given at least 4 times in the last 5 years. So that's kind of standard. I normally look at 3 years and above. So if someone has been giving consistently every year for about 3 years, that's considered a loyal donor, because they keep giving. They're there year to year. They're not giving one time and dropping off. You want to look at your individuals and annual giving. That's your sustainability. Now, a lot of people look at, well, I can get grants and I can get sponsorships and I can get corporate donations because they're going to be large donations. Yeah, but if a corporation changes their CEO, there's a great possibility that their focus may change. And they may be notifying you that we no longer support this particular area. We're working more in this space now. With an individual donor, they're tied to the mission of your organization. And as long as the mission of your organization stays the same, your focus is still the same, that individual donor will be there for years to come, years and years and years. Okay. So then after, another loyal donor, they have an affinity for your organization, which means that's that love piece. That's that I love you, you love me, I love this organization piece. So they have some kind of connection. It could be in your family, like there's connections with children who are adopted. And a person who gives to that organization may have also been adopted or in foster care. And so they will give based on that. You have autism, there's, families that, work with that give to organizations that work with kids with autism. And they may do that because they have a child that has autism, or maybe a sister or a sibling, or may have had autism or may have autism. And so there's a connection there. So that's that affinity piece. All right. So then let's talk about how to rate your prospective donor. Now, one is they have the ability to make a major gift. And this is what I would consider major donors, but your threshold may be different. So here's a little exercise you can do. If you're using this chart right here, you can rate your donor and you give them two numbers. So basically, if you want to look at your donors in terms of capacity. I'm going to put it all up here. Capacity and their ability. So the first section is and it says if you only have ones, use this scale then to adjust. So what you would do is you would look at this 1 through 5 and you would say, okay, my donor has the ability to pay $50,000 to $999,000, but they have the capacity, which is totally different. They may have given a one-time gift, and a lot of times those one-time gifts are skewed. And if somebody gives a $10,000 gift and may never give another $10,000 gift again, your data could be skewed in thinking that this person also had, because they had the ability to give it at that time, but they also have the capacity. Not necessarily true. It could have been a one-time situation where maybe they got, paid out on a life insurance policy, and they had some, they decided they wanted to give a portion of that life insurance policy to an organization. So they give a one-time gift of $10,000. But when you go and analyze that donor and do the analytics on it, you may find out that their capacity is less than $1,000 that they can basically give. So I hope you're understanding that, because this happens a lot. So if you have a lot of people that are under one, that comes to that's, mostly that's one, then you want to go to the bottom part where it's a little bit lower. The amounts are a little bit lower and they're up to 25,000. So, at this rate, a person may have a capacity of one, which is under $1,000, but they may have had the ability to pay $5,000 at one time. So that doesn't necessarily mean that that's their capacity. And you get tricked up with that. And so what you do is you assign them two numbers, a capacity and ability. You assign them two numbers, and if they come up 8, 9, or 10, those should be your prospects to go to. Now, one of the things that a good pipeline list is probably about 180 to 200 people in your pipeline, because by the time you go through them all, you may end up coming up with 4 or 5 actually good donors out of that. But if you're just starting out, it's okay to have about 15 to 20. 15 to 20 people that you kind of think are solid that you can work with, because you're going to constantly meet other people. You're going to constantly build this list, and you're going to constantly put people in your database, and that list is going to build. What I find is a lot of times is, when I look at pipelines, I see people with, the average has been maybe 150 to 200, because you got to think about, you're one person, and you don't want to have thousands and thousands of people in your pipeline, because you'll never get to them all. And then what will happen is it'll be too large to manage. People will fall off. It'll be hard to get them back because you didn't contact them within a certain amount of time from putting them on your list and things like that. So you don't want to make your pipeline so huge. And I know that sounds like it's a good idea to have a really large pipeline, but you want it to be manageable. And most organizations will consider, 150 to 200 would be a good pipeline. So that is it for today. Like I said, I will be constantly posting more information about all of this, on the page and things like that. Because it's a lot more, a whole lot more to this than what I'm giving. I'm just giving basics because, as I said before, I do see a lot of nonprofits being formed, and a lot of people are focusing on that front end, and the back end is the back office is just as important and should be prioritized as you're building your nonprofit. So you should be working on both ends. If you cannot work on both ends, and it's really about your expertise. If you're an expert with talking to people and fundraising and going out and finding funds and sponsorships and going to events, if that's your piece of the organization, find someone that can handle the back end for you. It could be a virtual assistant or something like that, but find someone to handle the back end for you, because while you're out talking to people and making connections, your back end piece, if it's not being addressed and it's not being focused on, and people aren't there, you don't have anyone back there, then all your efforts will, that one time, there'll be one donor at one time that you don't thank, and it'll be a good donor, and it could ruin the relationship. So you don't want to do that. So you want to, think about who is good, that can help me with my back end piece, because I like working the front end, but, I need someone to handle my back end. I personally like the back end. I like the processes and the processes and putting things in order and that type of thing. I like the work on the back end more than I like the front end. So it's really about identifying and I won't even say weaknesses, but it's your expertise. Where does your expertise lie at? So next week, November 17th, I will, like I said, I pushed list segmentation back, the top 5 ways to segment your donor list. And then I'm going to also do keeping your data clean, 7 cleanup strategies that I'll give you on next week. That will be the end of November because of the holiday, because of Thanksgiving. I'm going to, next week will be the last date for November, and we'll start back up in December with that year-end stuff, because it's about that time and you should be revving up. One of the things that you should be revving up for now is Giving Tuesday. Look into that. That's just like we have Black Friday, we got Giving Tuesday, we got Cyber Monday, and all of this. So Giving Tuesday is a day of giving. So you want to be part of that. So I want to thank you for your time, and hope all is well with everyone. We're staying safe, and I just hope that everyone's doing well, and be careful during the holidays, because I know people will probably be with family and traveling and things like that. But just stay safe. And we will see you soon. Okay.